Now, this morning, what are we going to do? We're going to talk from Luke chapter 2 about the second phase of what I call radical hospitality. This is a pretty exciting lesson. I enjoy preparing it. I prepared and presented a similar session about 10 years ago, but these have been reworked, and I love them. But as we turn our attention there, imagine this. Imagine that you've been on a journey, a long trip, and you arrive at your destination, and you need a place to stay. How many of you have ever gone on vacation without a hotel lined up and you're looking at the no vacancy signs? They used to do that more before the internet than we do now. But you're not really picky. You just need a place to lay your weary bones. And sign after sign says no vacancy, no vacancy, no vacancy. And your situation is further exacerbated because your wife is with you and she is just about to deliver a baby. And you're like, I've got to find a place to get us off our feet and to get her some rest and some safety. And finally, after what seems like hours of driving and looking and searching, you find an innkeeper who says, look, I don't have an empty room, but I do have a place in the back. It has a little sink and a little bed. It's not big enough for two people, but I stay there sometimes when I have to work a long shift and don't have enough help. You can stay there for the night. And you pay the guy and you settle in for a little bit of rest, whatever you can muster up. You know, that's a lot like what Mary and Joseph faced, isn't it? We don't know anything about that innkeeper, really, but we know he's taken a lot of heat for putting them in a cave behind his inn. But I wonder if he showed radical hospitality. I really do, because we're going to look at the passage. Let's read it. It's so familiar. From Luke chapter 2, came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be what? Taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, everyone to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea unto the city of David, which is called what? Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of whom? David. To be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife. They weren't married yet. They were espoused, engaged. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. I wonder, as I read that story with a fresh set of eyes after having read it for 58 years, if maybe this innkeeper was radically hospitable. Think about some of the things he did. He went to personal inconvenience, didn't he? I mean, think about it. The city was full because it says everyone had to go back to their hometown, essentially. And it was overflowing. He had built-in clientele. And it would remain so by order of the Roman emperor until the census and taxation process was complete. And he went to some personal inconvenience. He didn't have to do that. He was making money. His place was full. He also faced potential misunderstanding, didn't he? Not only did he personally inconvenience himself, but think about Mary and Joseph's situation. Mary was a young teenage girl. Some think 13 to 14 years old, most scholars. She shows up with Joseph. They're espoused. She's pregnant. What did the law of the time say should happen to them? They should be stoned. Deuteronomy 22 tells us she should be stoned with stones until she dies. And he took that potential misunderstanding and risk that violence might even break out in his hotel, his inn. If somebody had a few too many drinks that night in the inn and started thinking, now wait a minute, I don't think that couple back there is married. We need to take care of this. The misunderstanding, that would lead to liability, wouldn't it? What happened if he couldn't keep the lid on it? And an all-out riot, as it were, broke out. Now he has liability. This woman could die under his watch, as it were. And I think about this situation with the potential liabilities that were there, with the personal inconveniences that the innkeeper went through. He didn't have to do that. He had a full house. And then with the liabilities and the misunderstandings lingering, maybe he was radically hospitable and we've not given him credit for that. And as I think about it, I think, well, what now? What now? Okay, that was 2,000 years ago. And let's bring it forward now to 2021 and think about our churches. Are we willing to risk misunderstanding in order to be radically hospitable churches? Are we willing to worship alongside people who are different from us? Much different. Are we willing to sit side by side proudly with our LGBTQ family member who decides to visit our VBS? What will other churches think? That's potential misunderstanding. Are we willing to risk the liability of opening our building up to people who might mess it up, who might not know they're not supposed to eat in these pews, or who might not realize that this is a place we typically have a no smoking rule, but they don't know that. I told my church for many years when I pastored up the street, literally across 321, I said, I can't wait till we attract people to our midst who don't know you're not supposed to light up in the middle of the service. And that began to happen. We never had anybody light up, but we had a number of people who would look at me and say, I'm going out to smoke, because they had to have a cigarette. And our services were pretty short, so they needed a cigarette pretty bad. Are we willing to face the personal inconveniences when we invite someone and they show up? And then here's where the switch really flipped for me. Think about the process of inviting someone to church. Now, you received something this morning that I hope you'll read when you get home called Stop Inviting People to Church. Great article. Great article. A lot of good stuff in there. Don't read it now, please, because I might say something important. We'll try. But let's think about it. When you invite your friend who doesn't go to your church, doesn't go to church, whatever, to your church, where does the risk fall? Who assumes and absorbs the inconvenience? Is it us? No, we're going to show up for church. But think about the inconvenience your friend has to go through. They have to think, okay, what do I wear? Is this one of those churches where you dress up? Or is this one of those churches where you don't? Oh, man, I got to get all three of my kids in the car. Now, how many remember those days? Oh, yeah, you're still living them, aren't you, Alex? Yeah, I got to get them in the car. I got to get to church by 10 o'clock. Oh, man. Then I got to think about, okay, I get to church. Then I got to think about childcare. Can you imagine if you didn't know but one person in this building and you walk in and a total stranger says, here, I'll take your child. And off they go. Would you let them go? No. That's one of the reasons they've opened up in the back, so we can begin to make people more comfortable when they do come. They'll be able to see where their children are. You say, well, we never did that in the past. We knew everyone in the past. We knew them. We knew whom not to give them to. We knew. I knew that one lady in my church, I couldn't give my kids to her because she was going to fill them up with candy and they were going to have tummy ache all afternoon. You know? Yeah. Think about parking. You come in, you go, well, do I park here? Do I park there? Do I enter there? Do I enter here? What if I go in the front and they've already started and I'm walking in? Oh, wow. All of the risk falls on the other person, all the inconvenience. And that's why I say stop inviting people to church and start developing a relationship with them. And then see what comes out of that. You say, well, they need to come to church. Look, coming to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than driving in your garage makes you a car. Christ came and built a relationship with us. What we do on Sunday is celebrate that relationship. If a person doesn't have that relationship, it's kind of like going to a birthday party when you don't know anybody. It's kind of weird. But we forget that sometimes because we forget the inconvenience. Then you think about the liabilities and the misunderstandings that can happen in a church. Even violence, in some cases. You stand up for social rights and social justice in this country today, there is a chance it could lead to violence. Our own denomination, the Southern Baptist Convention, meets this week. And they're going to discuss where this convention, where this organization is going to stand on the rights of all human beings. And I'm going to tell you, I'm concerned that there will be some ugly fights that could lead at least to hostility, which is the precursor to violence. You say, really? Really? I've studied this. There is this huge, huge debate in the country right now over what's called critical race theory. Let me tell you, it's an ugly debate. And there are lies on both sides of it. And people believing lies. Are we willing to be a church that might be misunderstood because of our stand on issues of social justice, like Dr. King? Like in our own community, Marshall Rouse. Many years ago, Marshall Rouse and Mr. T. Jeffers would dine together when white Jewish men and black men did not dine together. They would go to the Holiday Inn and have a meal together so that people would see them. They ran that risk. Guess what happened? Because of their risk of violence and misunderstanding, much of the violence that swept the nation during the heart of the civil rights movement did not come to Gaston County. Because of these two leaders right here in our community, one of whom is still living and is in his 90s now, lives at Covenant Village, and ran a business literally in your neighborhood, Roush Industries. Made Christmas decorations for the world from right here down the street. Right down the street. It's now Industrial Fabricators, has most of the property. An amazing story right here in our community. But think about the misunderstandings and the liabilities. I'm not just talking about legal liabilities. I'm talking about practical liabilities. Somebody spills food in the sanctuary. Oh, no. Whoo. And think about this. And how have churches through the years, you've been in churches, you've been in this church, you've been exposed to others, you've maybe been in others. How have churches tried to mitigate things when they happen? Because when we face fear, what do? Okay, I'm afraid somebody's going to mess that carpet up again. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a rule. No food in the sanctuary. Boom! And I'm going to put it right. Do people pay any attention to that? No. But we're going to do it. There's a church just several miles from here. They have 33,000 square feet of space. And it is in the heart of a community that desperately needs to be served from a human standpoint and from a spiritual standpoint and a behavioral health standpoint. And guess what? Several years ago, a number of years back, they had a sideways experience when they tried to share their space. They tried to share it with another organization. It just didn't work for them. They didn't have any guidance, probably. They'd never done it before. Guess what? They have 33,000 square feet. Last time I preached there, they had fewer than 20 people. 4 buildings, if I remember right, 3 or 4, in the heart of need in this community. And we can't even get them to return a call about trying to collaborate in the community. They're, for some reason, not willing to risk that liability, that misunderstanding. I say to you that the people in churches like that are worshiping their building before they're worshiping God. And buildings crumble and they fall. And we have 33,000 square feet of space that our Salvation Army could use, that our homeless shelter could use, and they could still have church there every week. But we can't even get them to return a call. As recently as this week, I reached out. We've created property rules that keep people from embracing their community or from us embracing our community. And the question is this: what if we do have a mess on our hands? Okay, we'll clean it up. What if the liability for that innkeeper, what if Mary and Joseph hadn't left? What if they had become what we call squatters today? Woo, that would have been a mess, wouldn't it? But you know what? It may happen. You may decide, you know what? We're gonna let some people use our building, and well, what if they don't pay their rent? Well, we'll figure that out. Whatever. The question I have is, what are the fears that are keeping us from being radically hospitable to this community? Is it a fear that the building may change? Well, let me mitigate that for you. It will. If you want to be radically hospitable, your buildings have to change. Culture has changed. It's just different. What is the fear that may be holding us back? Maybe it's the fear, I'll have to learn new music. Guess what? You will. Does that mean the old music's bad? I love the old music. But music in and of itself is not going to change people's lives. But we do need to learn the language of the people around us and at least be familiar with it. This is one that I see over and over. There's a fear often in churches that prevents radical hospitality because my pastor may not be in his office when I need him. Look, pastors today don't need offices. They don't. They need a cell phone. That's all they need. They need a cell phone. And they need boundaries, I would say, because they have families. But somehow, churches love to know their pastor is on retainer. I know of a church in this community. It's on the other side of the community. Pastor told me people regularly drove by his office at 4:45 to see if he'd left early. Give me a break. He's not there anymore. He left. I don't blame him. Yeah. Actually, I can take you to 2 pastors who told me that. One's still there. He just comes and goes as he pleases. Bless him. Is our fear that if we have children come, they may act like children. The carpets will get dirty. Trash will get left in this room. Plates will be broken. Dishes may be spilled. But let me ask you something. Aren't those the very things that make a home a home? The broken plates. The stains on the carpet. This week, I was scrolling through some photos from the last several years. I was looking for a particular image that my daughter wanted to see. I couldn't find it. But guess what? You know which images made me stop and look at them? It wasn't the framed Olin Mills photo, unless I was looking at the bad hair we all had in those pictures. It wasn't the ones where we were standing erect. It was the ones with my granddaughter with cupcakes smeared on her face and the table around her. It was the ones where life was happening. It was the Christmases with paper on the floor at 4 p.m. because we had lived life. And unfortunately, our churches are scared of those things. And our churches have become more museums for the saints than hospitals for the hurting. And I pray that this church will become a hospital for the hurting lives around us, and that we will live radically hospitable lives, even in the shadow of misunderstanding and liability. That is my prayer. Amen. Now,